Shocking footage from Europa. A brazen attack by the Outer Way terrorist group, led by the notorious Danny Nakamura.
I truly believe one of the most important aspects of any video game is knowing what its identity is and building around that starting point in a fun, engaging way for the players. Unfortunately, the Callisto Protocol did not get this memo. The constant design choices that seem to battle inside the game attempting to pull the player in one direction or another is very apparent. Starting with the combat. Even though it's simple in nature, it could be incredibly fun when done right. While battling an enemy, you can dodge their attacks by simply leaning the thumbstick in one direction or another. Then you just alternate back and forth to avoid consecutive attacks, or pull the thumbstick back to block if you don't have time to dodge. Now, after dodging an enemy melee attack, you have a window to attack in return with your own. Then inside of this melee window, while in the middle of a melee combo, you will get the opportunity to pull out your gun and fire a quick round into an enemy weak point for extra damage. And this is incredibly satisfying since any gun you unlock can be used during the combo. Then it comes down to what gun you think will work best for a situation. Even though I must say I wish there was a little more variety in the weaponry, you basically have 2 handguns, 2 shotguns, and an assault rifle. You also do get some variety thanks to a simple upgrade tree that changes not only the look of the weapons, but gives them some new functionality. Same with your melee weapon. Then to help bring this trifecta together in the combat, you have this incredibly cool power gauntlet that allows you to pick up enemies and objects to throw them around like a badass Jedi using the Force. This can be upgraded as well, and you do this at these upgrade stations with the credits you find in the world from killing enemies, selling rare items, or finding them in the world. Enemies will also drop ammo for weapons, battery packs for your gauntlet, and health to heal you as well. Now this is where things get difficult because like I stated, the combat is amazing when you're fighting one enemy, that is. But the second the game starts introducing multiple enemies, the combat falls apart quickly. And that's exactly what I mean by the game pulling in 2 different directions. The combat feels amazing if this was set up like a survival horror game that focused on unique one-on-one encounters with you managing your resources. But instead, this is an action horror game that actually over time, as you progress through the game, throws more and more enemies at you, which leads to incredibly frustrating encounters that the combat system does not work in since you don't have the proper mobility to engage in them. Now the game does try to compensate for this by placing these spike walls all over the level design that lets you one-shot enemies by throwing them into them with your gauntlet. The problem though, if you were like me, you spent all of your resources upgrading your melee weapon. This in turn makes your gauntlet too weak to compensate for the amount of enemies you need to throw into the walls when shit hits the fan. Then you're just screwed. You have to hope for some good enemy RNG as they attack you to get through the situation, which sucks, because at that point, it doesn't matter how good you are as a player, since these factors are out of your control thanks to the level design, and you being punished for playing a certain way. And honestly, this probably could have been avoided if they would have added a simple roll button, especially when it comes to some of the boss encounters. It sucks finding something that can one-shot you with other enemies around that if they tickle you once and take away your ability to dodge, you're just dead. One thing though that the Callisto Protocol does get right is the environments. The lighting and details are incredible throughout the game. From dark corridors to the frozen landscapes, they really do know how to set up the tone for the area you're about to explore. And one of the best ways they do this is by showing what your destination is without revealing what lies in between you and it. Which is probably a good thing because what lies in between can oftentimes suck. Even though everything looks incredible, the layout of the levels can often be depressing. Take this area for example. There are these blind enemies everywhere that react to sound. If I attack one, they will all attack and maul me. So I can do one of 2 things. Use sneak attacks to take them down one by one, which takes forever, or use my gauntlet to take them out by throwing them into the spiked walls, which will also take forever since it has no upgrades because of how I chose to play the game. This is terrible design, and honestly, I really dislike this part of the game. It's like the game went from a survival horror to third-person action shooter to sneak around and not die. which sucks because even through all of the frustrating encounters, this was the part that made me not want to continue. But I did finish the game, and I must say I was fine with the story, which was pretty straightforward. Your ship crashes for reasons, you get thrown into a prison, some outbreak happens, and now you're unraveling the story of everything that happened as the main character Jacob Lee. I also really like how they set up the link between Jacob and Danny, the other prominent character that helps you through your journey. I just wish we could have seen more interactions between these two, and there is a third character that helps you out early on in the game. I won't spoil him if you haven't played the game, but he is very awesome and is probably my favorite character in the game. Now, as for the main villain, who gives me strong Matrix vibes when his hologram is talking, I was super disappointed in him. He really didn't feel that much part of the story, and the final boss was overwhelmingly disappointing. I liked the design, but I really was hoping they were going to do something more unique enemy-wise. And honestly, the Callisto Protocol, story-wise in general, just kind of feels like a setup for another game. With that said, I want to note performance real quick. I actually played two versions of the game, the Xbox One and Xbox Series X versions. The Xbox One version was almost unplayable for me. I would crash on an average of 4 times an hour. The voices didn't match the characters in cutscenes, and the frame stuttering was terrible. Now, the Series X version, I had none of these issues. It was actually a flawless experience in that regard. Now, I will say a patch did come out when I was playing this. I did not play the Xbox One version after the patch, nor did I play the Xbox Series X version before the patch. Things just ended up weird like that for me, but I will say you should probably wait if you plan on picking this up if you do not own a Series X or PS5. Now, I don't know how it plays after the patch, but I've heard the PC has just as many issues as well. That could be fixed at the time you're watching this video, but figured it was also worth noting. Now, how do I feel about the game overall? Well, I did have fun with the Callisto Protocol, but I couldn't help but imagine what could have been if the devs would have went all in on a direction for the game instead of this constant battle of trying to be two different styles of games at once. And take note, I have not played the Dead Space games, but I am curious to go back and play them now to see if they are really that much better or if everyone is overblowing it. Not to mention the Dead Space remake is right around the corner, so I really want to see how that compares to everything as well, since it's so rare you get a scenario where these type of games line up so close together in this way. But I suppose that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll talk to you all whenever the next one is.